Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're tackling practice tests head on and how to use them like a pro to boost those exam scores.
That's right.
I used to think practice tests were just like extra busy work,
Hmm.
but I had a real aha moment back when I was studying organic chemistry. Talk about a tough subject. I started using practice tests,
Uh,
and suddenly it was like those concepts finally clicked. Like everything just made sense.
oh, what?
Aced that final.
That's awesome. That's a perfect example of how practice tests can be such a game changer.
Yeah.
It wasn't just luck. There's a scientific reason why they work so well.
Okay.
It all comes down to something called retrieval practice,
Yeah.
which basically means you're actively trying to recall information from memory.
So instead of passively reading through my notes or, highlighting a textbook,
Right.
we're actually trying to remember the information like we would during an actual exam.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of it like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah.
There's research by Roediger and Butler from way back in 2011.
Okay.
That shows that retrieval practice is so much more effective for long-term learning than just passively reviewing material.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that's known as the testing effect.
So the testing effect. So by taking practice tests, we're actually making our memory stronger when it comes to that material.
Exactly. You're strengthening those neural pathways when you try to recall that information.
Oh, wow.
And here's another interesting layer to it. Practice tests also help you become more aware of your own learning process. This is something that's called metacognition,
Okay.
which basically means thinking about thinking.
Okay, metacognition. So practice tests help us understand not just what we know, but what we don't know.
Right. There was a study done in 2013 by Bjork and his colleagues
Okay.
that actually found that self-assessment through practice tests helped you pinpoint those weak areas so you could focus your study efforts where they were really needed the most.
So instead of wasting time on stuff I've already got down, I can actually focus on what I'm still struggling with.
Exactly. It's about studying smarter, not harder.
I like that.
And this leads us to another really important benefit of practice tests,
Okay.
simulating real exam conditions.
Well, yeah, you've got to have that dress rehearsal for the main event.
Right.
If you were training for a marathon, you wouldn't just show up on race day without any practice runs, would you?
No.
You'd want to practice in conditions as close to the real thing as possible.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And it's not just about getting used to the format, it's the pressure. Practicing under pressure can actually help reduce those stress-induced errors that tend to happen on exam day.
Yeah.
Find a quiet space, set a timer, stick to the exam format. All this stuff helps build your mental stamina for the real deal.
You know what? But let's be real. Sometimes life gets in the way and we all end up cramming at the last minute.
Right.
Speaking from experience, those all-nighters don't really lead to long-term learning.
You're right. Cramming might help you get through that immediate test. But the information, it's like building a house on a foundation of sand.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to last.
So what's the alternative to cramming? How do we retain information for the long haul?
This is where space practice comes in. It's like spreading out your study sessions over time, giving your brain a chance to really absorb the information. There was a 2006 study by Sapita and colleagues
Okay.
that showed that space practice led to much better long-term retention than just cramming.
So instead of cramming for hours on end,
Right?
it's about doing those short little study sessions, but spreading them out over a longer period of time.
Exactly. Much less stressful and far more effective in the long run. Now, when you're taking practice tests, you're bound to get some answers wrong.
Right.
And that could be discouraging.
Yes.
But it's important to reframe those moments.
Yeah, I can see that. Like getting things wrong, it's always frustrating. But in the context of a practice test, it's an opportunity to learn and grow from those mistakes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember, the purpose of practice tests is to find those gaps in your knowledge and address them before you get to the real exam. Research by Shute in 2008 actually showed that immediate feedback is incredibly effective for learning. Addressing mistakes while the material is fresh in your mind prevents you from repeating them later on.
So it's almost like having a personal tutor just pointing out exactly what you need to work on.
Right.
This brings up another question about the different types of questions we're going to see on exams. Multiple choice, short answer essays. It's like training for a mental marathon.
You're absolutely right. Preparing for an exam with a variety of questions is like training for a mental marathon.
Yeah.
Just like a marathon runner needs a varied training routine.
Okay.
You need to be exposed to all those different question formats.
So it's about going beyond just memorizing facts and figures.
Right.
It's about developing that flexibility to apply our knowledge in all sorts of different ways.
Absolutely.
But where do we begin? Should we just dive into the most difficult practice tests right away?
Not necessarily. Remember the idea of gradually increasing the difficulty.
Okay.
Start with easier practice tests to build your confidence,
Okay.
and then slowly ramp up the challenge. Think of it like leveling up in a video game.
Yeah?
You start with the easier levels and then gradually work your way up to those boss battles.
That's a great way to think about it. It makes the whole process a lot less intimidating.
So is there like a psychological basis for this gradual approach?
There is. It relates to Vygotsky's concept of the zone of proximal development.
Okay.
Think of it like this. If you're learning to play basketball,
Mm-hmm.
practicing against someone who's slightly better than you will help you improve much faster
Right.
than playing against someone who is far more skilled or a complete beginner.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing yourself but not setting yourself up for failure.
So we're challenging ourselves but not overwhelming ourselves.
Exactly.
This has been really insightful, but we have to remember that practice tests are only one part of a well-rounded study plan. That's a really important point.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't just use one ingredient to bake a cake.
Right.
You need flour, sugar, eggs, all the good stuff. Practice tests work best when you combine them with other study methods, like summarizing your notes, creating flashcards,
Yeah.
even discussing the material with your classmates.
So we're building a well-rounded study toolkit.
Exactly.
And practice tests are one of the most valuable tools we've got. It's
Sure.
like we're building this awesome study toolkit,
Yeah,
and practice tests are like one of the most valuable tools we have.
absolutely.
Right,
But how do we know if it's actually working?
right. How do we track our progress? How do we make sure we're on the right path?
That's where tracking your progress comes in. And it's not just about like seeing your scores improve.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about celebrating those small victories along the way, right?
Right.
Each improvement, no matter how tiny, is a step closer to that ultimate goal.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like acknowledging those little wins, it can really boost your motivation
For sure.
and keep us on track.
Exactly. And by monitoring how you're doing on practice tests, you can start to see patterns or maybe areas where you might need to tweak your study plan a little bit.
Okay, so it's about being flexible and adapting our approach as we go.
Right. And this also ties into like cultivating a growth mindset,
Yeah. Yeah.
which we've talked about before, right?
We have.
It's not about seeing mistakes as failures, but seeing them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Absolutely. A growth mindset is so essential for any learning journey.
It really is.
And it sounds like practice tests can play a key role in developing that mindset.
Oh, they definitely can. We've been talking a lot about how practice tests can really boost your exam scores.
Yeah.
But let's switch gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about some of the wider benefits.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are those benefits that go beyond just acing exams?
Well, for one, practice tests can actually help reduce test anxiety
Oh, really?
by familiarizing yourself with the format and kind of the pressure of exam conditions.
Yeah.
You're taking away some of the fear and mystery surrounding it.
Like facing your fears head on
Exactly.
and realizing they're not as scary as you thought they were.
Right. And as we mentioned earlier, seeing those small wins can be a huge confidence booster as well.
Definitely. And practice tests can help us establish like a consistent study routine.
Yes.
When you have those regular check-ins with yourself, it's a lot harder to procrastinate or let things slide.
Absolutely. It's like built-in accountability.
Yeah. I know for me, when I'm engaging with the material regularly through practice tests, I'm way less likely to put things off till the last minute.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, practice tests encourage a deeper level of learning.
Oh.
They force you to think actively about the material, make connections, apply your knowledge in different contexts.
They're like a workout for your brain.
Right.
Pushing us to go beyond just surface level understanding and really grapple with those concepts.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how something as simple as practice tests can have such a big impact on our learning.
It's about embracing them as tools for growth, not just measures of where you're at right now.
I love that it's about shifting our perspective, seeing practice tests not as something to be afraid of, but as opportunities to learn and get better.
Exactly.
So if our listeners could take away just one thing from our discussion today, what would it be?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is don't just focus on the end goal, the exam score. Embrace that process of learning, of challenging yourself,
Okay.
and using practice tests as those stepping stones to mastery.
I love that it's about shifting our mindset from fear and avoidance to curiosity and a genuine desire to learn and improve.
Exactly.
And it's important to remember it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There are going to be bumps along the way, but each practice test is giving us valuable insights and helping us become more resilient learners.
Beautifully said. You might even find yourself enjoying the process along the way.
Okay, maybe enjoy is a strong word
Uh-huh.
for some people, but I get what you mean when you approach practice tests with the right attitude. They can be such a powerful tool for growth and self-discovery.
They really can. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Every little sign of progress, no matter how small, deserves to be acknowledged.
Yes, absolutely. Celebrating those victories helps us stay motivated and reinforces those good study habits.
Right.
We've talked a lot about applying practice tests to academic exams.
Yeah.
But what if we took this concept and applied it to other areas of our lives?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
That's such an important point. The things we've talked about today aren't just limited to school.
Okay.
They can be applied to all sorts of skills and goals.
So fascinating. Give us some examples of how we could use practice testing in different contexts.
Okay, imagine you're learning guitar.
Okay.
Instead of just strumming along to your favorite songs,
Mm-hmm.
you could set specific goals for yourself, like mastering a certain chord progression or learning a new song,
Okay.
and then track your progress.
So like creating mini tests
Right.
to check our understanding
Ex-
and figure out where we need to practice more.
And you could even record yourself playing
Right.
to hear how you're progressing
I like that.
and see what needs work.
Okay.
And this applies to so many other skills and goals. Like, let's say you're trying to improve your communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
You could practice active listening techniques or role-play difficult conversations
Okay.
and get feedback from friends or mentors on how you're doing.
It's all about actively participating in our own learning, no matter what we're trying to learn.
Right.
Setting goals, seeking feedback, constantly trying to improve.
It is.
This has been such an eye-opening discussion.
It has. We've gone from debunking those myths about practice tests
Right.
to uncovering their true potential to transform not just our test scores,
Yeah.
but our entire approach to learning.
So well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface
We have.
of what's possible when we really embrace the power of practice tests.
There's always more to learn.
Yeah.
But I hope this deep dive has inspired you to see practice tests in a new light
Yeah.
and to think about how you can apply these principles to achieve your own goals.
Wow. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling super energized.
I know, me.
After exploring all these different aspects of practice tests, it's like
Yeah.
we've unlocked this secret weapon for learning, and it goes way beyond just exams, right?
It really does. It's amazing how a simple shift in perspective can completely change how we approach learning.
Yeah.
Speaking of shifting perspectives,
Yeah.
I'd love to leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking idea.
Okay. I'm all ears. What's on your mind?
We've spent a good amount of time talking about using practice tests to get ready for, specific things like exams.
Right.
But what if we took this idea even further?
Okay.
What if we started thinking about applying those principles of practice testing to our lives in a much broader sense?
So instead of just focusing on, individual tests or exams,
Yeah.
we're talking about adopting this practice test mindset for continuous growth in all areas of life.
Exactly. That's it.
Okay.
Think about it. We set goals. We work towards them. We evaluate our progress. That's essentially what a practice test is doing, right?
Right.
It helps us figure out our strengths, where we need to improve, and how to adjust our approach.
That's such a good point. It's like turning everyday life into a series of these mini practice tests.
Right.
Constantly challenging ourselves to learn and grow.
Exactly. Can you think of any real-world examples of how this might actually work?
Yeah, totally. Let's say your goal is to start a business instead
Okay.
of just diving in head first.
Right.
You could break down that big, overwhelming goal into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah, like milestones or checkpoints along the way.
Exactly.
Each one acting as the mini practice test to see how you're doing.
I love that. So we could set deadlines for reaching each milestone,
Yeah.
track our progress carefully, and even ask for feedback from, mentors or advisors at different stages.
Exactly. It's about having a more structured approach
Yeah.
to learning and growth,
Right.
even when you're not in a formal testing situation.
And this approach could be applied to so many different goals and dreams. It's really cool.
I know it is.
It takes the pressure off of achieving that one big far-off goal, and instead it focuses on making consistent progress through smaller steps.
Yes, it's like building momentum with each practice test we successfully complete.
Exactly. And this whole idea can even apply to personal growth, too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you want to get better at communicating.
Okay.
You could make a conscious effort to really practice active listening,
Yeah,
engage in tougher conversations, and ask for feedback from, trusted friends or family members on how you're coming across.
that's a great idea.
So basically, we're turning everyday interactions
Mhm.
into chances to practice and get feedback.
Exactly.
I love how that mindset shift can turn even the most ordinary experiences into valuable learning opportunities.
It's about that growth mindset, right? Seeing
Yeah.
challenges as chances to learn,
Yeah.
to get better at what we do, and just constantly striving to be the best versions of ourselves.
This conversation has been so inspiring. Honestly, we've gone from the nitty-gritty of using practice tests for exams
Yeah.
to this much wider and deeper understanding of how this approach can change our whole relationship with learning and growth.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a true deep dive into the world of practice testing
Yeah.
and how it can truly impact our lives if we really embrace those core principles.
Well, listeners, we've come to the end of our deep dive.
I know it's flown by.
I hope you found this exploration of practice tests, valuable and insightful.
I hope so too.
Remember, whether you're gearing up for an exam, learning something new,
Mm.
or simply trying to become a better learner, those principles we talked about today can be applied in so many ways.
And don't forget that the most important thing here is your own curiosity and willingness to learn.
Yes.
Embrace those challenges,
Yes.
celebrate every win, and never stop pushing yourself to grow.
We're so glad you joined us for this deep dive. Until next time, happy learning, everyone.